So this is your security training for 2018-2019 STAAR testing. This training is mandatory every year for all test administrators in order to review proper monitoring of the administration as well as reporting of violations. We always like for everyone to be trained just because we never know what kind of bind we might find ourselves in and might need to pull someone in to test at the last minute. Obviously, I say this every year, the training does not take the place of reading your manuals and your resources. I usually try to get these out to you guys a couple of weeks before you test so that you have time to be prepared for your administration. I was told this year that they would be online and would not come as a hard copy in the mail. However, I did receive copies for the December EOC administration, so I'm hoping that that was inaccurate information or fake news, so to speak. If so, I will make sure and print them for you so that you will have a hard copy. Okay, so just security, a little bit of what security is. Basically, I'll give you some time to read through this, but security just basically refers to preserving the integrity of the entire STAAR testing process before, during, and after testing, from checkout of the materials up until they arrive back at the storing locations. The testing oaths that you sign every year will also look a little different this year. These will be an online feature that I feel better about having a copy of, so I will print these out and have them for you to sign like always, but it will most likely look a little bit different than years in the past. So when you're signing these, you're basically just saying that I am aware of the procedures, I have been trained, and I agree to abide by the regularities. So the law is pretty cut and dry on irregularities and the consequences of such. I always want to stress this part even though we feel as though it's a no-brainer. I have personally seen things happen in another district that I would not have ever imagined would happen. So I always like to go over this and stress the importance of it. The biggest and most obvious violations are the loss of jobs, revoking or suspensions of teacher licenses, as well as the invalidity of student tests, so causing their tests to not be able to be scored. TEA categorizes irregularities into two categories. You've heard this before. The first is serious irregularities. These are irregularities that are more severe and result in more serious consequences. They must be reported to the district testing coordinator or administration, and then, of course, we have to report those to TEA. Some examples of serious irregularities include directly or indirectly assisting students with responses to test questions, tampering with the responses that the students have given, or even just failing to report an incident that you become aware of. Telepass testing only includes some of you, but TEA has really tried to stress the importance of confidentiality and security of the telepass calibrations. Procedural irregularities reflect minor errors with testing. This is the other type of irregularity. There are usually minor bumps in the testing week and things that we have to address due to my errors or other things that come up unexpectedly, but these things can usually be fixed pretty seamlessly. They usually don't have to be called into TEA, but please let an administrator or myself know if something comes up so that it can be addressed and taken care of. Some examples of these type of procedural irregularities include maybe giving the wrong test to a student or failing to give a student the correct supplemental aids or supports. Those are just things that kind of come up and you notice on testing day that we need to fix, and we can usually fix those pretty quickly. With both procedural and serious irregularities, anyone has the right to report that has knowledge of the issue. So now we're going to talk just a bit about the test administration specifically. Please make sure that your walls are cleared of any materials that would help in assisting students with test questions. Check your personal room for tests that may be given there, as well as the classroom that you may be assigned to if it's different from yours personally. Just making sure all those things are covered and that there's nothing up that would assist the students in the test. If you are assigned to give an oral assessment, I will give you an additional book with some guidelines for reading a test to a kiddo. And it just goes through specifically, especially if you're reading a math test, you know, how you are supposed to say the decimals and how you're supposed to say the fractions. And that's always a good thing to look over. I usually try to put the math people in the math tests. But it's always a good idea to look over those things. That way you know that you're saying what you're allowed to say. Some of the things to remember when giving an oral administration is that even though it is a smaller group setting, we want to make sure we don't lose sight of the professionalism and seriousness of the test. Just simply read the questions and the answer choices without rephrasing the questions or providing emphasis to lead them into the direction of the correct answer. Sometimes it's easy to find yourself doing those things, especially if you're giving a test to a small group of kiddos that you work with quite a bit and they feel like they have a relationship with you. And, you know, just make sure that it's a professional setting and you're just reading the questions and the answers and you're not trying to lead them into a correct way, or one way or the other. Calculator policy changed just a little bit. This doesn't apply to all of you, but calculators are required for all 8th grade math and science tests. Mr. Fawcett and I will make sure that they all have them on these days. Students that are in grades 5 to 7 that are allowed to use a calculator on the test will be listed on your test roster in your testing box, and a calculator will be provided for them. So they won't come to testing with their calculator. It will be in their box. Mr. Fawcett and I will make sure the 8th graders have their calculators and that they've been cleared out and are in testing mode and all that good stuff. Dictionaries must also be available for the reading, writing, and English assessments at a ratio of 1 dictionary to every 5 students. I'll work with the reading teachers to make sure that these are available in the testing rooms, so you won't have to worry about that on test day. But just so you know, if you're giving one of those tests, just a good idea to double check and make sure that those are provided in the room. We're going to handle the electronics the same way we did last year. You will be given a Ziploc bag to collect phones in. Make sure that you also think to collect smartwatches as well as tablets of any kind. When a student has completed testing but is remaining in the testing room, they should not retrieve their device. However, if they are moved from the testing location to another location, after they've completed testing, you can go ahead and give them their device as they leave. We had some issues, especially with the upper grades, moving on and to a group that had completed testing, but their phone or their watch or something was back in the testing room. So just make sure that if they are finished testing and an administrator is moving them out of there, you can go ahead and give them their electronics at that point. This slide just kind of lays out when you would stop the clock during testing. Anytime the student takes a break during testing, that is included in their testing time. Now, if there's an emergency or students test into the lunchtime, we'll direct you to stop the time so that we can regroup and let them eat lunch and move the testing groups around. But otherwise, if they get up to go to the restroom or they just take a break there at their desk, their testing time keeps going. Accessibility and designated support. These are some examples of some of the accessibility features that can be available to all students without having to have a plan in place. Reading test to self, covered overlays, highlighters. Most of you know all of these things, but these are things that you can give all of your students. Blank place markers, just kind of lists a few of those. I'll give you a little bit to read through those. Locally approved designated supports. There are a lot more of these that are available, but these are the only ones that are used in our districts. These are the type of supports that have to be approved and included on the child's approved accommodation plan. These will be noted on your roster for the kids that receive these accommodations. And then if it's an item like a supplemental aid or a calculator or such, it will also be in your box for the kids. Just a little bit about actual test administration and monitoring. What is active monitoring? Watching students work to ensure they're on the correct section, not working on anything that would take your attention away from monitoring, like email, reading, grading. Gone are the days where we can read a book and check our email and such during testing. And then another important one, never leave students or secure materials without another trained test administrator present. This is especially important when you pick up your tests and then maybe you think, oh gosh, I forgot something, or I need to go to the restroom real quick. Give those to another teacher to watch that's been trained. Don't just set them down somewhere outside the restroom and go into the restroom, or just make sure you don't leave them sitting in your classroom while you go run those last minute errands. People would be happy to watch those for you. This just gives you some more reminders of how to actively monitor. None of the students should have supports or aids if they're not approved to use them and it's not marked on their roster. Seating charts, I always put seating charts in your testing box. If that's something that you would like to have ahead of testing, you're welcome to come get one of those a few days before and go ahead and have that filled out. But they will be in your box, and on the other side is usually the where I have you mark their start time and their stop time. It was not brought to my attention in our testing training this year whether or not we were going to have to record that on the answer documents this year. I will try to find out that, but I will probably go ahead and have you write down when they start testing and when they stop, and go ahead and calculate the total minutes to test. Even if we don't have to report that on the answer document, I think that's a good thing for us to keep track of, and a good thing for us to know just for our own personal use. So this just kind of is a good slide for what can I say and what can I not say. When you're looking over their answer documents or towards the end of testing, some of the things that you can say, remember that you must record your responses on the answer document so that they're not turning in a blank answer document, or they haven't skipped a line, skipped a few questions. You can also tell them, be sure to erase all your stray marks that you might have accidentally made on your answer document. Another one is, make sure you bubble your bubbles in completely. I'm kind of OCD about this, and I spend a lot of time going back and bubbling in the bubbles really dark and neat, because if they've left some, I just don't want anything to prohibit them from getting it scored correctly. So just making sure they bubble in those bubbles nice and dark and clean, and erasing all those stray marks on the test. And then, of course, if you have that kiddo that wants to ask for, what is the question asking here? I can't answer that for you. Just do the best you can. Sometimes they're innocently just not real sure how to proceed. And, again, we can't help them. Just do the best you can. The writing prompt, any student can request to have the writing prompts read or signed. That doesn't include us, but you can read the prompt to them. You can read the entire prompt or any part of the prompt as many times as necessary. Reading anything on that prompt page is allowable. So this is just an example of answer documents. There were some questions that have come up in the past. Most all of the answer documents will be pre-coded. I will turn those in, and they will come already with a scan on the side for that kiddo, and that means the bubbles should all be blank. If we get new students to our district after I have already submitted the extract to receive those pre-coded answer documents, they won't come with the rest of the kiddos. We'll have to hand grid an answer document for them. So some of you asked, this kiddo's answer document, it's bubbled in and this one isn't. That's why. Most of them should not be bubbled in because they will be pre-coded, but you may have one or two kiddos that don't have a pre-coded label and they have been filled out, and I will usually do that before testing. So that's why it may look different than everyone else's. So don't erase any of that stuff. It's on there for a reason. And then also remind the students that do have the barcode. You don't have to write your name and bubble in. That you don't have to do that. If it's not bubbled in, you don't have to. If it needs to be, I will do that ahead of time. Collecting and returning the materials. This usually goes pretty easily and pretty flawlessly when a student has completed or turned in their test. They will stay in the testing room. You can allow them to work on another activity or read quietly at their desk, but they need to be busy and quiet to let everyone else finish. And then you, the test administrator, can use that time to scan over their document and make sure that they've recorded them all correctly. And then we're not allowing the students to leave the testing room when they're finished until an administrator comes to relocate them to another room or to lunch or so forth. So they're not allowed to leave the testing area until someone comes to move them. When you finish with your entire class, you can put your sign out that you're finished or that you need a break and come turn in have somebody watch your class while you come and turn them in. Here is my email and cell phone number. Testing day, I probably will not be looking at my email, but I will have my phone with me. So that's one thing we didn't talk about for staff members. We do allow you to have your phone on. Set to silent, and you can use that during the testing for emergencies only, but also for texting myself or Jason or Misty and just, hey, I'm missing this, or I need this, or can you come help me with this, or I have a question. There is my cell phone number, so you can text us during testing, email me anytime before then. I did not include Misty and Jason's information, but I'm sure that they would be happy to allow you to do the same. So I try to keep it short and sweet for you guys. You have this information to go back and look over at any time. And I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much, and here's to a good testing season.